Hello, welcome to another episode of the SENDhelp podcast. And today I have Abi with me, and it's quite a good one to be fair, because I think just what Abi does needs to be done more. And you're the dyslexia teacher, aren't you? Really? And well, I won't butcher what you do, but yeah, I think personally, just we'll get into what she does. I think this is something that's missed a lot in schools, and even when it's picked up in schools, it's not followed through. So it might be, and I think there's a lot of misconceptions and a lot of confusion and overlaps over ADHD and autism and other neurodiversities and dyslexia. And yeah, we're speaking that, and obviously about other things about jail statistics, but we'll get onto that as well. But without further ado, here's Abby.
Hello. So
Mm,
yeah, no, one of the things when I had the first conversation with Nate is basically we said pulled up a statistic. Now there's several statistics, and I found that 42% of people with ADHD have dyslexia, and some places I've found it's actually higher. So there is definitely people say I know somebody else in your podcast that says dyslexia comes with friends, and it
mm,
often isn't by itself. So you're absolutely right. There's tends to be quite a lot of overlap sometimes with ADHD and dyslexia. There's a lot of overlap there. So sometimes they pick up on like the dyslexia but not the ADHD, or vice versa, or go, oh, actually, because what gets missed with the ADHD type is the inattentive. The hyperactive is kind of very obvious. You can't
yeah,
deny it. But the inattentive, that's what gets missed. And especially with women and girls as well, because the ADHD for them can look like you might say something like, oh, can you do X, Y, and Z? And they'll go, what? Like that.
yeah.
And that then they just deemed as like scatty, daydreaming, etc., etc. So yeah, so like with dyslexia, unfortunately, in the education system, teachers, as you're part of your teacher training, you're not trained
Mm,
on how to teach students with dyslexia or ADHD or autism. So you're not given that specialist training. So teachers with the best will in the world, and they really do try, but they haven't got the specialist training.
yeah,
It's not their
yeah.
fault.
Yeah, and it is a specialist thing to pick up, isn't it? Because even myself, I've got dyslexia, and it's the one that I haven't really looked into at all to even think it had any effect on my ADHD or autism or similar. And after speaking to you and speaking to other people, it has a massive effect. It's huge. It's almost like its own. Well, I know it is its own disability in its own right, but it's almost the same effects. Like people think dyslexia is just reading and writing. It's not. It's a lot more than that, isn't it?
So much more. So yeah, I'm glad you said that, because I wanted to say that, because people think, oh yeah, reading, writing, spelling, nope, can affect your speech. But a lot of the time people don't realise it affects your executive functioning skills. So that's organisation. So
Mm,
like organisation of thoughts, things, your thought process, because what I find with like dyslexic students, when they're writing, they have amazing ideas that they'll tell you orally what they want to say, but actually writing it down they really struggle. And I say to parents, the reason why is the executive functioning skills, because you've got to first of all sequence your thoughts. That's a dyslexic trait, you find sequencing difficult. Then you've got to also think about what's the structure, like the beginning, middle and end. Then
mm,
you've actually got to think of what words to use, and there's lots of layers. It's like
yeah,
I suppose think of a red velvet cake, you know.
yeah,
Okay. So, if you just think of it like that, there's a lot more to it. And so even if they've got maybe a word map or not a map, a mat, that's still not going to be enough. They need that scaffolding. So
mm,
it really impacts those executive functioning skills. And it's things like not knowing your left and your right. I mean, for goodness sake, I'm still going, when I'm following like people going left and right, I'm like,
mm.
I don't know. I have to think, when I'm thinking right, I have to lift up the hand I write with, because then I know which one it is. So it's like,
I didn't know that was dyslexia.
that's
So
very
that
common.
that could be an actual real out there symptom that people miss, that people, because that's quite common. I know a few people that get their left and right confused, and yeah.
So there's right and left. It's other things like, for example, like doing shoelaces. That's another one, tying shoelaces. They might find that difficult. It might be obviously mixing words up. So saying flutterfly instead of butterfly. So, and then it's that organisation. So they'll kind of feel well, they look like to a teacher or a parent that they're just totally disorganized and don't know what they're doing. But actually, that's not true. It's just because they really need help and support just organizing their thoughts and actually being able to do one step at a time, because you probably know if you talk to any of your children, you go, oh, can you do X, Y, and Z? They look at you and
Yeah,
go,
that
huh?
does. Yeah.
No. So it's not just that, it's also processing verbal information. Both people with ADHD and dyslexia find that really difficult. So I know when people are talking to me, don't ask me for like if they gave me directions, I'm like, what? They've gone, go this way, go that way. You're like, what? And it's the same in class. So for example, if a teacher says, okay, class, we're going to do X, Y, and Z, the child's going, well, I've remembered X, but what's don't know what Y and Z, and then it appears to a teacher or somebody else that they're not listening or pay attention, but it's not that.
So when you have ADHD on top of that, and again, that's so similar to ADHD, does that just like supercharge the whole problem with it? So like it just makes everything twice. They work together in that sense.
They worked it, yeah, because it basically, with the ADHD and dyslexia, it does give you poor executive functioning skills. So it's
Mhm.
that organisation of thoughts and other things. And again, when you have ADHD and dyslexia, those skills will be poor, but you doesn't mean you can't get round it. So that's
Right.
always one thing I say to the kids.
Mhm.
We're always going to find, I'm going to always teach you a way to go round this situation. Never will you be like, I can't do that. There's no I can't in my books. There's always I can, and we'll find a way, so that is really important. But they do need different strategies in order to be able to do those. Even I spoke to one parent and it was something really easy, like when they went to get their lunch, they had to put their knife, fork, and like their dish that they had their food in certain places, and the poor child just couldn't remember and just used to get so stressed about it. So then ended up coming in with a packed lunch. So it's just simple things like sequencing, and so that's why like visual cue, like visual timetables, that I need to do X, one, then this, then that, really helps a child with dyslexia and ADHD, because then they're not having to process all that the words. They're actually just using like the pictures, going, okay, I need to do X, then I do Y, then I do Z. And that's really helpful for a child with ADHD or dyslexia, to be honest with you.
That's really, yeah. The more I'm like going through the last couple of years, the more I'm realizing like stuff. Again, I've talked to this before about things that work for neurodiverse kids working for every kid, and stuff like the what to do next. It's one of them fail safes, isn't it? That if you just had it in place, just in case one of the kids had it, it's worth it, and every kid will benefit from it, because who doesn't like things broken down extra more? And that's really good. It's a really good method of doing it.
Absolutely. And as you say, it would benefit every child in the classroom. It's not just like those that may be finding it a bit tricky. Everybody will benefit from it, because you can guarantee they go, what was that again? And so it just goes, oh, let me have a look. Oh, yes, I know I need to do X next. And that really helps a child, like any child, to be honest, if you
Yeah.
force, not just those that have dyslexia and ADHD, or both. So, yeah.
That's really good. With So in a school with dyslexia, I know they get screens, but how much of like how much knowledge would they would get trained at all? So as a teacher, what would be the first sign that you'd think that they would see in a classroom for seeing dyslexia? Is it still just the reading and writing that they're looking at?
I'm going to tell you, I'm going to unpack that. It's a big
Mhm.
question. So I'm going to unpack this a little bit. So schools, like you'll find parents, like especially like in Key Stage 1 reception, year 1, year 2, they say, I'm dyslexic, or their husband's dyslexic, or whoever, someone's in, and they're noticing all the traits that they had in their child, and they're saying there's something wrong here, there's something wrong here, there's something wrong here, and they keep going, and they're going and told by the school, oh, we'll be fine, we can't do anything till they're in year 3 or they're 8 years old, blah 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 blah. So the poor parent goes round and round in circles. They get phonics like intervention, but that doesn't really help, and I'll come on to why that doesn't help. So they get that, and then the child just gets more and more frustrated, because year 1 to year 2 is a massive jump, and they just can't necessarily grasp it. Like they here is absolutely, it's nothing to do with intelligence whatsoever. It's really, they have the knowledge here. It's about showing how they apply it. And because of like dyslexia or ADHD, or the both together, it's not really shown they're not given the opportunity to show how they can
Mm.
do things. Does that make sense? So with the reading, with dyslexia, they need early intervention. I mean, statistics show the earlier the intervention happens. Now, I don't just mean phonics intervention. They need a structured, multi-sensory, sequential approach to reading. And it is not the phonics way we teach at school. Okay. It needs to be very structured. And unfortunately, even though a lot of my students, they're taken out and what have you, like for extra lessons at school, but they're not progressing because they're like, well, we can't deviate from what we're teaching everybody else.
Yeah, that's the problem, isn't it?
That's the problem. But to be honest with you, if we taught all children that approach, all the kids would be able to read. Hooray! You know,
Yeah.
it wouldn't just be those that like are just neurotypical or just, you know, find reading easy. So if we were being able to completely change the way we teach our children to read, but not completely, but it's just the way it's being taught now just doesn't work for a dyslexic brain. It just doesn't. And I say to parents, how are they, that's one of the first, I say, how did they get on with their phonics? Because I know what's going to happen. It's going to say, well, it was a disaster and I can't, like, either they tell me, I say, do they remember the sounds? Yes. Could they apply those sounds to words? No. They come out with something completely different. And this is because with dyslexia, you have poor phonological awareness. So, or you could say poor phonological difference. I think that's because, again, if you notice language with ADHD and dyslexia tends to be negative rather than positive. And let's have a difference rather than a deficit. You know what I mean? So they have a difference in when a person with dyslexia processes like is hearing those sounds in terms of like that, like, you know, I don't know, phonic sounds. They need an explicit way of connecting this says this to how this is written on this piece of paper. Okay. And that is what they need. Now, they obviously they do at school, they will do those multisensory approach. They'll be tapping their arm, they're doing everything else, but it's not, they don't have the time to consolidate those sounds enough. They need to understand how that one sound sounds to how it's written down, to being able to blend it, to being able to read it, to then being able to read it in sentences. And it's not the teacher's fault. They've got to gallop through the curriculum to say tick, 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 they're all done. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And that child will just fall further and further behind. Does that make sense? So
Yeah. No, so that, that's going to be difficult then, isn't it, as well? Because I heard, I think it was to do with dyslexia as well. Also, another reason is, you know, the screening test. Like, so if you're doing something like functional memory or working memory, you don't have time to test that. So, like, a lot of the test is just on the like on certain bits of it, and not about the working memory, and not about the retaining of information and stuff like that.
depends on the screening. So again, this is what I say to parents and again, a lot of the screenings aren't particularly accurate. Some are better than others. Don't get me wrong. Some are better, but it depends on what screening they are doing to start with. You see, this is why I say to parents, find out what screening they've actually done, and then you'll be able to get a breakdown. Because I had one of my students actually that was about to go for a screening. I said, what screen? Find out. I said to her mum, find out what screening they're doing. So then I could see what it was. And I said, I actually had to tell the student, do most of them incorrectly, because if she'd have passed that, they wouldn't have looked into it further. So I said, make sure, do some of them right, but do a lot of them incorrectly, because it would take someone that's severely dyslexic, really, really, really struggling to not pass that, but they still be dyslexic. So lo and behold, she got it wrong. So then they called in an assessor, and lo and behold, she was dyslexic. She was diagnosed with dyslexia. So it depends on the screening. So it's worth finding out what they screened in the first place. Because you're right, some won't look at that working memory, some will. So it depends on what screening you've had. But the screenings aren't always very accurate. That's why you need to diagnose this, really and truly. However, of course, because it's not deemed as a medical issue, because the actual way to treat and to support a person with dyslexia is actually through educational help. It's not through for ADHD. They put you down the pathway of maybe CBT
Mm.
or like ADHD medication, because it affects your let me say this right, your neurological pathways.
Mm.
So that will help it stabilize. But with dyslexia, it's not that. And it actually needs to be helped with through an educational intervention,
Ah,
which is why the NHS don't do it.
yes, that makes sense now. Yeah.
So, yeah.
It's
So,
left to the schools, isn't it? And then even getting it assessed, that's why it's like that weird, "Oh, you might have it," and then nothing really gets done sometimes.
so again, because assessments are not the cheapest of things to do, so a lot of most local authorities will not do it.
Mhm.
Some will. Some will. There are a few that do, but not. It is a small majority, a small minority that actually do. So until you get that assessment, and that assessment will go in depth of what that child, what type of dyslexia they have, because there's different types of dyslexia. It's not just a one size fits all. So again, for them to understand what the child is experiencing, what their strengths are, what they need support with, and then that's able to then help a parent and a child understand. Now, then when it's given to school, unfortunately, like schools with the best will in the world will try and put things in place, or some don't altogether. Some are awful. Some
Mm.
are really good and really do support the children as much as they can. Of them just don't have the training because it's not part of your teacher training. So
Mm.
therefore, you're kind of, it's like the blind leading the blind. So
Yeah.
they just go, oh, we'll do some overlays. We'll do some phonics intervention.
Yeah, that's
Kind
it,
of
yeah.
like we're getting to year 5 and like, well, phonics still isn't worth it and they still can't read. Maybe we need to try something else. And this is why this early intervention would be super helpful. Like, I know back last year, Jamie Oliver went to meet Bridget Parliament, and one of the things that she spoke about with him was about getting early screening. So, like in those like that key stage 1, so reception year 1, year 2, because the thing is, if they're given extra support, then not just the standards phonics, and that would need training for teachers specifically for that, then they could do that with the whole class.
Yeah.
But again, because teachers are stuck to a blasted curriculum, you have it dashed through and you haven't got time to keep the child that's not got it. You just have to move on.
Yeah. No, that's a shame as well, isn't it? Going in school, as a kid that goes with dyslexia, I do there's a lot of, because it's one of them. It's a lot easier, I'd say, to say you've got ADHD than it is dyslexia, because dyslexia comes with its own stuff. When you're in school, you still have spelling tests and have to read out loud. It's just awful. And like, I imagine like the crippling anxiety where the teachers used to. That's what I mean. Like, if you don't get the support in the right, you're actually out in the kid that's got it by accident, because spelling
Absolutely.
tests are a norm. Some schools do competitions on them, and then you've got people that are doing reading tests, and also you go through reading levels as well. So like, it'll be very obvious that and then you just won't do it, because you're not going to then just pretend that you're just reading these like well behind the kid and just cause a chain reaction. And so with like, obviously that one is obviously, I suppose that's so relevant, but does it get better? So with the right support, would that help? So if you got that in year 1 and year 2, would it die down the stigma because you would actually get the support, so you would learn to read and catch up and be on par, or would you still always be a bit behind?
Now, that's a really great question. It depends, because dyslexia, like everything else, there's a huge spectrum. You can have like
Mhm.
severely dyslexic students. Like my cousin was severely dyslexic, so he could barely read at all. It was his saving grace that he actually broke his arm in his GCSEs because he had a scribe, and that's why he passed. So it would help tremendously if they did have that intervention. So it depends on the level of intensity of intervention, if it's the correct intervention, and then they might not necessarily catch up to their peers, but they would certainly make huge progress or catch up to their peers. It
Yeah.
depends on the child. Now, I know that hasn't really answered your question, but it's kind of like, how long is a piece of string? Because it depends on the child. But it really is important if they got that right support, because what I really see, and breaks my heart tremendously, is the morale, as you say, because they see their kids, like all their classmates getting 10 out of 10, they get 1 out, and they go, you'll have that kid going, yeah, you can't see that, yeah. And it just reinforces, I'm not good enough. I'm not clever. And that then starts to kind of go through. Does that make sense? And then
Yeah.
it becomes like an identity thing. Well, I'm not clever. I can't do this. And you know, so having that right support from like early on would help tremendously. Because they can start to kind of really do the right intervention with them to get that right support. So yes, they may be slower than their peers, but doesn't matter. At least they would get, you know, they'd be able to start seeing progression rather than nothing at all.
Yeah.
And then, you know, like, you know, kids that have been, I mean, actually, do you know what? I put this on my social media today and this made me really smile. Like, one of my kids last week said, Abby, I put a message in the chat for you. And it says, he said, like, I read Tom Gates. And he's reading a Tom Gates book. And now this, like a couple of years ago, this was a child that could barely string a sentence together. Or that doesn't make sense as a sentence, but, you know, sounding out every single thing. And now he's just sitting there with a book.
That's
And
crazy.
he's like, yes, that to me makes me so happy.
So because I've always assumed that the way that I read and some of the words I get stumbled up and stuff like that is just there forever, and there's no way out of that, and that's just part of it. Like, it's kind of, but again, I suppose because it was no early support, and it's kind of by that point you've kind of lived with it. At that point, it doesn't change. So is that something that does change? So like the reading and writing, the big stereotype, with the right support, is that something that actually changes, or you can put a little effort into making?
Yeah, you can make a change. Like, I mean, with the reading now, you're always, I think, yes, with the right support, you are going to make progress for sure. With the right support, you will make. Now, you might not be reading, I say this to parents, you're not going to necessarily be reading Dickens at the end, or
Yeah.
you'll find things that you're going to struggle with and they still read slowly and things like that. But they will make progress. And as you say, because as an adult, you've gone, well, I've gone through this for so long. I know how to do this. Does that make sense? So, and this is why, I mean, even myself, I listen to audio books rather than physical books because I just can't, I find a huge amount of text overwhelming and I read it and I've forgotten what I've read. Then we have to read it again. And so, and that's that poor short-term working memory. And that's happens with dyslexia and ADHD. So, you know, we've got so many other ways of accessing like the words and the things like that, you know, like we've got, you know, things that can read things for us. I say, use it. That's what it's there for. We
Yeah.
don't need to struggle. As long as we can read basic stuff, like
Yeah.
the things like on a medicine, you know, like on a packet like, so you know the right correct medication to take or things like that, you know, just like basic stuff that, you know, how to cook, I don't know, follow a recipe or something like that. You know, the key fundamental things, then everything else is kind of almost like a bonus. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah. No, that does make sense. Yeah, that's really with dyslexia as well. So with ADHD, when obviously you get the behavioural and stuff like that, but I suppose that's a very good reason as well of identifying. I suppose they wouldn't even look at that as a root cause of why. So if you're struggling, no, it's specifically for the in education. So it's not the ADHD, you're just not paying attention, or you might be doing this and you've got dyslexia that you can't actually process it. Is there a way, not a correct way, but is there a better way to learn being dyslexic in
Well,
completely different? So if you put go on, I'll explain that. Yeah.
no. So, like, to answer your question, like, you know, being distracted, that's also something with dyslexia, not just
Yeah.
ADHD. So, and I know I had another parent that said, oh, school keeps telling me that he's got ADHD. And she's like, no, he's dyslexic. And like, he came to us and he kind of did reading classes and then he was able to read and then his behaviour dramatically improved. Why? Because
Yeah. That's what I mean. Yeah.
this is it. And often you'll find that child with dyslexia, either it goes two ways. Now, it will either become they're very well behaved, they're very quiet, they look out the window, they won't do anything, or they'll go the other way and just disrupt the class or do something to get out of the task. Because if they know they're disrupted, they're going to get sent out. That's a win-win situation for them because then they don't have to do it.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying that, you know, like from, you know, and then they go, oh, I've done that. Okay, I know that strategy works. Then let me do it again.
Yeah. Yeah.
Does
It's
that make sense? So yeah, so you're and it's not because they're actually naughty or got behavioural issues. What it is they're actually really struggling with something, you know. And I say to people like parents, I say, right, if I sent you to a full immersive Chinese school and you couldn't speak Chinese, you're going to get very frustrated and very cross if you don't get the right support. Same.
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah, which then causes behaviours to take ripple effect, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So, like, for things like, I feel because obviously Now, this is going back to like how to teach everybody like in a way that works for everybody. Unfortunately, our education system is still back in the Dickinson times. We're
Mm.
still in the 1800s. It hasn't changed since then, really and truly. And if we think actually before the Industrial Revolution, were we sat in schools? No, we were, kids were out with their parents learning like things on, working with them, learning trades, learning this, they were, watching, learning, obviously they'd probably be taught to like write, read, etc. But it wasn't until the Industrial Revolution says, oh, we need workers, get them all into school. And also the other thing is the Child Labour Act as well. That's why we teach children so young in this country, because it was to stop child labour, which made sense back then because children were stuffed up chimneys and all. That's not quite the case anymore. Do you know what I mean? And
that's what I mean. I mean, did they even let black people in the class now? Even way before they even changed the curriculum. How crazy. Like all of them historic events that have happened and changes that have happened in society and the world, and not one change in the educational system is baffling. That's crazy.
then you have to think of it as a system. It's a system. It's not, and it's not fit for purpose anymore. It's not.
No.
Is not fit for purpose, and that is not a criticism of any teachers or anything, or any way or shape or form. It is the system. The system doesn't work. It's broken.
No, yeah. I think the teachers would agree with you. If the system changed, they would have a better chance of teaching, so that it's against them as well. So
Absolutely, 100%. It's poor teachers are in such like you. I tell you, everybody's leaving. All the teachers are leaving the classroom. And it's not because they don't love children or love to teach. They love that, but it's everything else that comes with it.
yeah.
So
And the effort you put in to try and help the SEND kids is probably what you're getting criticised as by your peers, by not being a functional teacher or being able to keep control of a class or for getting consistent grades. Or do you know what I mean? It just harms you. The more you help, it harms you as a teacher.
And again, it depends on like the school. It depends on like the like management. But like, there definitely there is like schools that are like that are toxic, and there are really good schools that are supportive. So it depends on where you're at and what school you're in. But it's just broken, really, and we need a different way of supporting children who are neurodiverse and who are not. To be honest with you, because to be honest with you, if you look at what we are teaching the kids now, is it going to be relevant for when they're getting a job? No, because if we look at how rapidly our job market is changing, because with the introduction of AI, a lot of the jobs that we are training them for now are not going to be there.
Oh yeah, any office job and stuff like that, any sit down work. As I said, you've already taken it with ChatGPT. It's kind of pointless even teaching a kid now in class. It's like, because all of the things that could be taught, it could just ask the question and get the answer. And for not only that, learn itself at its own pace by asking the right question and how it wants to. So I would actually say that ChatGPT might actually be a better teacher than most teachers.
But I won't go that far. I mean, because ChatGPT does make mistakes. And I'm not going to lie to you, it's made lots of mistakes. I'm like,
no, it does. It's hallucinating, doesn't it?
It makes mistakes. It's not perfect, but we need a education that really supports children. I mean, if you look to maybe like kind of like Norway or Sweden, there's they're taught lessons in empathy. Because it's not, and teachers are highly respected. They're well paid, a lot of responsibility comes with it. But they have, the classrooms are not set up like prisons. They're allowed to go to the toilet if they need to go to the toilet. I mean, it's just, so. And they're taught other skills, they're out in nature and doing other things. It's not, they don't really start official education until they're 7, so they don't like officially have to sit down and start reading, doing this. Because, and again, that's just due to our Victorian background in terms of like, the child labour bill. That's why we ended up going to school so early. But, they teach them so many other things. It's not just, we're going to read, we're going to write, we're going to do this.
No. And I think that's a very good point to go to the next bit, isn't it? Like, so when that doesn't work, and because they're not putting the effort in, what actually ends up is most people with ADHD end up in like prison or in trouble or young offenders or, God forbid, like foster care. Do you know what I mean? Which then is even, that's a sentence I wouldn't wish on the verse of people at the moment, the way that the world is. Like, it's just a minefield, isn't it? And it's just, that must be costing them millions.
Yes. So again, okay, let's pull up some statistics here. So half the prison population are considered to be neurodivergent. And I pulled up something from before when I spoke to you before, and it was about a judge saying the amount of people that I am seeing in front of me that are illiterate. Now, and that means,
Mm.
and so if they were given, I'm not going to say that for everybody because some people just do go on the wrong path,
Mm.
but you're very, your opportunities in life are very few if you can't read.
Oh, yeah, and frustrating and embarrassing. Yeah.
Embarrassing. There's a lot of shame that comes with it
Mhm.
because that is why that child will start acting up to get out of the class because they say, I don't want my friends, especially in teenage years. Like my friend completely reminded me, my tutor used to ask me to read because we used to read and I refused point blank. He's like, you need to read. I'm like, no. No, I just absolutely refused because I felt embarrassed. I didn't want to
Yeah,
read in
yeah,
front of everyone. I was like, no, I'm not doing it. And I actually, he didn't quite know what to do with me because I was like, nope, not doing it. Again, it's that shame and like you feel embarrassed.
yeah, yeah. Which is then
So
gonna cause to sneak out other behaviour. Yeah, it's just you can see the pattern, can't you? You can see exactly how it happens and why
absolutely.
they end up there. And if you're saying so half the population of prisoners are neurodiverse, that's just, uh, ones that have been diagnosed, right? So that's probably much more.
Exactly. And it's even fact in I've got another statistic here. So since 2021, the service has identified 25,000 prisoners enrolled in education. I don't mean just education, I mean like reading education because they can't read. That's
Oh,
yes. And 180,000 prison screenings for reading took place since April 2020. That tells you there's a lot of illiterate and prisoners that are either struggling to read, can read but can't read very well, or struggling.
if they're doing the screenings and that in prison now, that's way too late.
Thank you. Because if we actually did it, if we actually gave, this is my point about early intervention, right? Because
Yeah,
if we actually got now, and I don't mean this is as a thing for schools because schools need the funding to be able to do it, which the government has cut. So it's not, again, it's not the school's fault, but if we were to able to fund schools properly in order to get the right screenings, to get the right intervention and the right specialist training, then you'll probably end up with less people in the prison system.
yeah. Which at the moment is, it's just it just sounds so simple, doesn't it? Like to
But it's not. It's
and
not
in front of your face, but it doesn't. But as I said, I said this earlier, and I think another podcast that it's one. It might be easy to fix the problem, but that creates another problem somewhere else, and then another problem, and another problem. So where everyone thinks, oh yeah, just change this, or why don't you just do this? Then you're like, yeah, but where's the money coming from that? Where is it? And it's all connected into one big ball of absolute bullshit, really, isn't it? But like, it's just because you would think, oh, why just put it in then? It's easy. Just do the screening for everybody. And you're like, yeah, then they're going to have, again, it's not taught. So they're going to have to get dyslexia teachers in. Like they're going to have to get specialists,
and that costs money. And again, is that right? That funding, it's down to funding. So
which
again,
then will cause a shortage, I suppose, like educational psychologists now, that they're not going to have people through the door enough that are qualified enough to do the job, which then causes the chain. Yeah, it's very hard, isn't it? To like, but
yeah,
again, eventually, ultimately, surely it's worth it because the money you're spending at the end goal of them, but already going through the cycle, going through every kind of system, going through the mental health system as well, going to prison, going through all of that, getting rehabilitation. You're spending millions on one person.
that could have been prevented by if you got some early intervention. Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
So yeah, absolutely. So prevention is better than cure. So
Mhm.
if we were to really get the kids the right support earlier on, that would make huge difference. Because the thing is, what happens? They tend to either go, oh, when they get to year 3, they might think, oh, like when they get to 8, that's when they can actually do a proper diagnosis. And the reason why they have to wait is because with that diagnosis, it actually requires that child to be in at least 2 to 3 years of education because they wouldn't be able to answer the questions. They can't. Does that make sense? And that's why they hold off. But the problem is, if we didn't do that, if we did the early intervention, like treated them like they were dyslexic in the first place, then it wouldn't be playing catch up later on. Does that make
That's
sense?
it. Yeah. Yeah. Just getting ahead. So just put it unanimously for everybody. And that's just the way you do it going into school. They get the tested as like as early as they can. And then the ones that flag
Absolutely.
up and keep an eye on. And even if you have to keep them shortlisting them till they're 8, at least you've already worked in that setting. Yeah. Instead of waiting till the last minute. That's perfect.
Yeah, so just screenings, and then they have spoken about that. Like Bridget discussed that with Jamie about, bringing in those early screenings to identify children that could be possibly at risk. But again, it depends on the type of screening they use, whether people go through the net. So it needs to be a sort of really robust screening that looks at all the elements that will be weak for a child with dyslexia. Because
Yeah.
sometimes, and then this is another one. Another thing is DLD. A lot of people aren't sure about DLD, and again, that they think, oh, they're dyslexic. Sorry, not dyslexia, dyslexic, and actually they have DLD or like a combination and things like that. So again, that's not really well known about either. So there's so much more training that needs to be done in terms of for teachers because it's not their fault,
No.
because they were never taught.
No. Do you think, in that case, going off that, do you think it should stay an educational problem, or do you reckon it should come over to like ADHD and autism? And do you feel that if it does, that will then again risk the little pressure that education has on it by taking that away? Then, because what will happen is then, like they don't do in schools, so there's no they support ADHD in school, but not necessarily done the training. So every bit of the diagnosis, the support, any kind of problems is outside private work. And so I wonder if, like, what was your views on that? Would it be better just keeping it as something in education and pumping it all as something that goes for education, or taking it out as something into the mental health or ADHD disability sort of?
So it's not like a mental health. It will cause mental health issues because they just feel so low, because of everything. But it is it's actually to do with that phonological processing and awareness and just being and how your brain actually functions differently. So in terms of remind me of the question, because you gave me a lot of information.
Okay.
Come back.
Yeah.
This is what I mean about oral processing. You said all this stuff and I'm like,
No, I didn't think that, but I can't. But yeah, so would you think? Oh God, I've got myself now. Oh yeah, so would you? So the problem I mentioned the problem earlier is that it's not seen as like ADHD and autism. It's seen as an educational something that's an educational. Would you think that they just need to highlight it more as an educational need, or do you reckon they should start pushing that out to being like a disability need and something that's looked at by NHS and looked at by someone, or do you think it should remain in education because you might lose sight?
Yeah, it is the intervention is educational. It's
Right.
not via the NHS. The NHS pick them up because what happens is they end up with low self-esteem or other things that are attached to that because they feel really unworthy because they're just really struggling. I mean, my cousin turned around to my mum and said, I don't want to live anymore. I can't stand, I hate this. I wish I'd never been born.
Yeah.
Person saying that, and it's not the first time I've heard this either from other people, and it's just, that's when the NHS will pick them up, but for a dyslexic student, they need that right support, the educational support.
Definitely. Yeah, Dana.
Yeah, definitely, 100%, before it ends up being an NHS problem. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So that makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
But I'm
I
going to
think-
say something here. Dyslexia comes with friends, so it's worth, you're very unlikely for a person to have dyslexia just by itself. You're very likely to have dyslexia and like ADHD or dyslexia and autism. Some people just have dyslexia, but there's often a case, and that's why that will need to be looked at by other agencies such as the NHS, because that isn't an educational field. They can help.
Fine. Yeah.
They can help in terms of different ways of teaching and things like that. But there's other things that would need to be done by other agencies. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. No, that makes sense. Also, so do you reckon do you think it's improving then? You're saying that obviously, Jamie, I've had that talk. You work in the field. It's not. Do you reckon it's the same as every other problem?
To be honest with you, I feel like it's getting worse rather than better.
Oh, yeah, right, yeah. So definitely
I feel because what's happened is they have cut, and this hasn't been something, recently. This has been going on for years and years and years. They've cut schools' funding so dramatically that they're using people, students' EHCP. So like one child has an EHCP and they're using it for the whole class. That funding, because they can't afford, even though that child might need X, Y, they're trying to give that child X, Y, and Z, but that child and that funding will be used because they need it. And often what you'll find is some schools are not reluctant to let students go because you lose their funding. And that's so sad.
It's sad. Yeah, it is. And that's quite common as well. And also, I was going to say, as well, there's a lot that I speak to that have got EHCP or got funding, and the kid's actually not in school. And they're not at school getting the funding, and they're running the rest of the class. And the other kid that's actually got the funding is not in school. And again, as you said, won't let them go because of the funding. So they end up with a stalemate of a kid that's missed school for a year and a half, 2 years.
Yeah, exactly. So, and it's so sad, and you feel like, and then there's kids that have had the HCP and had the funding and still can't read because they haven't had the right, they haven't had the right intervention. So again, it goes back to getting the right specialist support.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it's not something that is going to happen overnight. It's not because like dyslexia training, like you'd have to do it at least a year on top of a teaching degree to start. Then obviously then that means you'd have to pay extra money, etc., etc. So again, is that something that's going to be feasible? Probably not. So they might do a little element of it, but they're not doing enough.
It's crazy, isn't it? And I think the only hope we've got is people like yourself that have kind of. And like, kind of what we're trying to create in like the SENDhelp app and stuff, isn't it? That we need to cut. It's not going to be a quick change. It's not. And again, the change that has to happen is so big that I can't even. It might be one of the biggest changes that we've seen in our history. Do you know what I mean? Like it's going to have to start at the beginning and go up and change everything. But all we can do for now, I suppose, is educate and give the information. And I think, especially for people like you, it's important because I said I have gone my whole life speaking, knowing I've had dyslexia, and it's only speaking to you that I'm finding out new things. Like, and I work still, even in the SEN field, it still doesn't come up enough. It really doesn't.
Yeah.
It comes up as I think they might have that as well. It never is. That's causing as much problems as that is. Like, it's really, and the more that we can speak about it, the more the podcast goes, I think it's really important to capture that it has its own issues. It has its own problems. And again, if you have got ADHD or something as well, don't think the sex is in the background. It's running side by side, like
Absolutely,
at least.
they're running together. They're like two, but like, and it can, and so for especially with reading, and if you've got dyslexia and ADHD, your brain then is like running like a Ferrari going, and then you'll miss words and you'll slip, and and that can also be part of dyslexia. But also with the speed of what your brain is working at with ADHD, it's like I notice when I send people text messages or say I read it back and I go, oh, I've missed some words out because in my brain I've said it, but what I've written down doesn't actually reflect what I've actually thought in my brain.
Yeah,
so,
no.
You know this probably. You do that all the time as well, probably.
Yeah. No, I do. Especially like when I'm being really lazy a bit. Sometimes I know and I'm like, it doesn't make sense. I have to do it. But thank God that you've got the little buttons so you can press and it opens up. It's like puts the eye in front of the hand and stuff like that.
Oh, thank God for that tool. Let me tell you. Now I don't have to go, sorry, ignore that message. Read this again. I can just go, let me edit it.
You just feel like the whole thing's underlined. So like something's gone wrong here.
Yeah, let me just do that again. So that really helps. But I think, I think, as you say, like there's this dyslexia. People think dyslexia is they just can't. They're finding reading difficult or spelling difficult. But there's so much more to it. And then with that understanding, and I think like for kids who in the class that aren't dyslexic will have a greater understanding for their other peers. So they go, oh, they're just finding it difficult because they're dyslexic, not because they're thick or because the amount of
just an alternative way of thinking, isn't it? Just they do it that
way.
Alternate
way of learning things. Yes, it will make things more difficult. I'm not going to lie to you. Yes, it will. You're going to have to work harder. I'm not going to lie to you, but it just means your brain works differently, and we just need a different way of working. And for me, that's something I always tell the kids. It's not. We'll always find a way around. We just need to do it differently. That's all.
That being said, I've just had a thought. So if they're that similar, would ADHD medication actually help dyslexia?
No. Because this is the thing. This is so ADHD, right? There are there's similarities and there's differences. So with your ADHD, it's to do with your prefrontal cortex. You're not getting enough dopamine, which then doesn't create your regulation of your brain properly. Yeah. Okay, but with dyslexia, it's different. So it's how you process things phonologically. So it's like how you hear that sound, how it's written down. There's rapid accessing. So like, for example, what I mean by rapid accessing is like I showed you like pictures of things and you said, oh, it's a ball or it's this. Now I commonly will think, I know what it is, but I can't think of the word. It's so annoying. And that's
Yeah.
that's an ADHD thing as well. So, but that's what I mean. There's so many overlaps with ADHD and dyslexia. But the thing is, yes, your brain works differently with dyslexia, but it wouldn't be something that's medication is going to help. It's educational intervention.
It's always going to be education. It's not like something, yes, it's not like a dopamine fix where you just put the dopamine back in and
then
so
it's all good. No, it's because if you look at brain scans of people with dyslexia, their phonological processing part of their brain is actually smaller than compared to a person with who's neurotypical. It doesn't mean that they, there's nothing wrong with their brain. It just means their brain processes that part differently, and that is why they're finding reading or spelling or whatever difficult, or even speech.
would it be a sad world if we realised, like, in thousands of years of time, that this was never a minority and everyone always had something?
Wouldn't that think? I mean, to me, I just think for me, when I got diagnosed with ADHD, I thought, thank God, I finally now understand. It was just such a relief because once I had the diagnosis, I looked at my daughter, I'm like, well, you definitely have ADHD.
Yeah.
She says, like, this is a no-brainer. She's like, no, I don't. I'm like, you do. We're going to get you, we're going to get you assessed. And then my mum, I sent the list of kind of like symptoms of my mum, and my mum's like, oh my God, because my poor mum always thought she had dementia or something like that. But I'm like, no. And for us now as a family dynamic is so helpful because we understand why we do what we do. And like, it seems like we're being flaky or, this, that, and the other, but it's not, it's just how our brains work. So it's just like being given the right key to the right car. To go, right, this is how your brain works. It might not be easy to start up that car, don't get me wrong. It still may be tricky, but it enables you to understand and go, right, this is why I find this difficult, and then being able to get that right support so you can do it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I think that's a good point as well, isn't it? Because it's so and this is what I mean. So if it's not a minority and it is, we end up, because it's either not that everyone's on the spectrum already, but what I'm theorizing is that because it's so potent in families, in the sense of they've really miscalculated it, I'd say it is near enough guaranteed to have a passover of the condition. So ADHD, autism, something, or dyslexia. So if that's the case, eventually everyone will have that condition, surely? Like, do you know what I mean? People, so instead of it being, oh, that one or two person works that way, it's just, you either think that way or you can think this way or you can think this way. And that would be amazing. That would be like, great.
There's nothing wrong with our brains. It's just,
Yeah.
it's just a way of thinking differently, and it's just our brains work differently because, people with dyslexia are able to really, they're able to visualize things. They're very visual. They're able to, and they've got big picture thinking. There's other skills that come, that didn't come with like a neurotypical brain. So and it's really showing, those people actually, just because your brain works like this doesn't mean it's game over. It just means you just need to, work with it like this instead. And yes, you might find this difficult, but this is how you're going to, and you learn as an adult, as you go through that education system, how to navigate it. And it's not easy and you find it difficult and things like that. But with the right support, this is what we need to have an understanding of why it's like this, would then create a huge amount of understanding. Because then rather than a child belittling another child going, oh, how did you know your times tables? I didn't know my times tables till I was in my 30s. And that was because a Ladybird CD, because my daughter was learning them. And that's the only way, because I could, if I went, I'd count them on my fingers, I'd actually remember that. But it's only till I had this CD that sang it, and it sang it in a way that the kind of the words kind of went with the sounds. I was able to remember it.
Yeah.
It's just like,
That's crazy.
So, because I'd have to, like, before I began 6, 12, 18, like, 24, it's 24, I'd have to do like that because I couldn't, like, and that again is, poor short-term working memory and like accessing things quickly and this is why these stupid times tables tests are a waste of time for kids with, dyslexia, because they can't, your brain just doesn't work like
the way
that.
you'll remember it. And it's just like, even the stuff like when they still do that part of, it's not just answering the question correctly, it's you have to do it the precise way and explain it. And that's just like a power trip in an exam, isn't it? Like, why? If I've got the question right, why are you making try? And again, if they actually use that for an open answer, they'd actually see a lot of kids would work it out differently.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's the thing. And then that's the beauty, to me, that's the beauty of a mind, like a mind, to see how people
Mm.
process things differently. What, there's, like what answers they've come to and what conclusions they've come to based on how their brain works. But
Yeah.
now it's become such a very prescriptive tick, tick, tick. That's it. And that's just so sad because we're not
Yeah.
robots at the end of the day. We are, human beings. We've got different brains. And that's the beauty of it. That's, if we all had the same brain and we all worked the same, life would be a very boring place.
It would be. It would be boring. Said it would be very restrictive and controlled. And it would be, you could
Absolutely.
say you might not get done on surprises, but it'd be a very sad world, wouldn't it? When you
Good.
know what's coming at all times and,
Absolutely. I mean, like, if you look at the high proportion of people with ADHD and dyslexia that are entrepreneurs,
Mhm.
now there we go. So, and I know someone was questioning, why is that some people gone down the entrepreneurial route and some people have gone down the prison route? And there's a very fine line between the two.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it depends what you're entrepreneuring, I suppose, because if you're entrepreneuring the wrong stuff, you get very good at doing the drugs and end up in prison. So I mean, if you
And
think of
this
it
is the
that way,
thing.
actually, that makes more sense because yeah, they're probably actually organising the whole fucking company like illegally.
But if they use those skills, the same skills that they've done for doing that, and actually applied it to
That's
something
it.
else, it would be the same
But no
skills.
one told them they can, and that's the problem, isn't it? No one said with what you've got, you could do that into a real business. All they know is that they can do that, and and it's kind of reinforced, isn't it? How well they do about it. Then they get through business, but it's just, oh, I'm successful at that, and that's bad because they could use that in a company. They could use that to do something else because that's what the ADHD mind is specifically, and the autistic mind, especially with like workplace CEOs and the pressure that goes with that. It works perfectly.
Yeah, I
It
mean,
works perfectly. It just skips the levels up. You might not be a good support worker, but you might be a good leader. Like
this
it's
is it.
crazy.
I mean, like, he was never diagnosed with autism, but he was definitely autistic. That he shows, I mean, like, working with like autistic students, and you go, well, this is very familiar. This is just like being at home, like, you understand now, looking back, why my dad did, like
Yeah.
things that he did. And I'm sure my dad had ADHD as well. Again, because I'm like thinking, this is all very familiar, and now I look back, I go, this all makes sense. So for me, but he was really good at what he did. He was like top in
Mm.
his field because he had that hyper focus of what he enjoyed,
Yeah.
and was just like,
Yeah. And again, like again, you either got the imagination and the basic like to create the company of ADHD, but even autism, being the CEO is very hard and
yeah,
mentally exhausting. If you can tunnel vision your way, and again, the way that it works of statistics, and this is what's to happen more just so than people's emotions getting caught up in what's emotionally right. It's an easier thing, and as I said, that's why they thrive in these sort of companies, isn't it? So people don't see that as I see it as evolution. I feel like the neurodiverse is evolution because
absolutely,
it fits the world it's currently, and it's going to develop the world going forward. Like, and to be
absolutely.
penalising it like they are is crazy. Again, maybe that's why they're penalising it because they're a lot of neurotypical people that don't understand it and are frightened by the possibility. Because again, as you said, the education system, just like marriage, was their part to control, and so that people didn't do unexpected things. So we knew where people were at a certain time. Where ADHD and autism doesn't work like that, and
Nope,
that can't be controlled.
nope.
And you can have a kid at 11 that can start up a company successfully, and then a person that's gone to uni, and that scares governments, I suppose.
It scares people because people are taking back control of their mind. They don't want that.
Yeah,
Yeah. Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
that's
So
it.
this is
It's
it. So,
insanity.
I read somewhere there was a kid. He runs his own like West Indian takeaway, and what he does. He's like, I think it's about 10, or he's young. Listen, and it's doing really well, and he runs it, and he uses all the profits to go towards charities to help children like with disabilities and things like that. I was like, wow,
Wow.
why are we not having people like kids like this going and talking to kids and saying, look, this is what I've done, like, what's possible for you?
Yeah, and they would have penalised that because it would be like, as long as he's going to school, do you know what I mean? The school would have been heavily in front of him even being able to have that business because they'd have said that he needs an education, even if he was being successful. And you were like, then arguing like, so he's made the end goal early and you're making him still go through the steps. That's crazy. Like,
It's crazy, and like for me, I just think like in terms of what like look at what we're actually teaching. what are we actually, like skills are transferable, right? Reading, yes, we have to read. We have to be able to write. We need to be able to write, and not necessarily novels, but we do need to be able to write a
Yeah.
sentence, to send people emails, to send people messages. We need to be able to do that. We need to be able to do basic maths because we need to add, subtract, divide, multiply. We need to do all of those things, work out percentages and things like that. We need all of that. We need to be taught budgeting, which they don't tend to do, which is very important. Like that is much better than working out some sort of equation. When have you ever used equations?
I know.
Have I ever used it? No.
It's just so textbook. And by that time, that's like the level of the people that will use it. So that should be something part of like an A level. That if they're going to do maths or something by choice to do say to degree, you do that sort of equations and all of them shit. Like,
I think for me, I just don't understand why we don't teach functional skills in secondary school, because those children that really either struggle with maths or English or both are given another option to get the same grade as the GCSE, maths and English, so they can go on to do whatever they want to do next, but in a way that just makes sense for them. It's practical and it's just logical. Because, we're not going to sit there and go, well, let's do an equation together. Unless you're mathematically minded and you want to study engineering, then you need.
that's what I mean.
But this is the thing, if you know this isn't for you, then why are we it's just pointless.
No, it's a waste of time as well. All that potential caned into like however years, like 11 years of school. It's crazy. And then they could have done anything, and then at the end of it, then they go do it. But you've just, but again, that's the type of control, isn't it? So you know where they are till they're a certain age.
Exactly. It's all about control. So this is really us, taking back control.
It
Is taking back that power to the people, just really taking back that control. But we need to work cohesively together. We can't, if we're arguing between all of us and not working together with organisations, that's not going to happen. We need to work together cohesively in order for that to work. And that is not an easy feat at all. And I'm not saying there is a magic wand. There is not. This is going to take time. It's going to take planning. It's also going to take people that are visionaries that actually want this to happen.
Yeah. And it also is going to take, I think a lot of it comes down to these teachers not complying, but coming to our side. Because it's all right if the biggest problem about all of this is it remains a parent issue. And until these teachers are stepping up and saying, no, we can't work like this needs to change because that is your job right now, that needs to heavily be in the forefront as well. And I think we're nearly there. But unfortunately, I feel, again, sometimes now by being that teacher, you get outed and then you get left in a vulnerable position. But it needs to be unanimous. I said it's a system that needs to change. So everyone beneath that system needs to be saying the same thing. It can't just be the parents.
And I'm going to unpick what you've said here, because again, if a child is diagnosed, or if they've had X, they then have to put them on the SENDhelp register, which then means they have to allocate funding. So again, it's money. It's down to money. So it's not necessarily teachers don't want to help. It's not because they're thinking, well, how am I going to then facilitate this? I can't, because I don't have a penny to rub together. So how am I going to help this child? And they really do. Some teachers, have either a dyslexic themselves, or they have dyslexic, children. So and I've spoken to parents. This teacher was fantastic. They've done X, they've done Z, they've run, all of this. But it's just that knowledge and understanding that's missing for the majority. And it's just having the understanding of how to speak to schools as well, is because, that's another thing. It's not just talking to them, it's actually having the right frameworks to talk to them as well. That's another thing. That's really...
That's it.
100%. That's like podcast 3. But because it is the word. That's the whole. I've just learned that about you have to, the way you email back is massively how you get speak. So the way your whole approach, which is hard to do again if you've got undiagnosed, like a lot of these parents have ADHD or autism, to then go through a period where you've got to then take all emotion out of it, and it's your child, and you're getting mugged off clearly in your face, and still have to go through process that take years. It's a very big ask, isn't it? It's a huge ask, and it's really frustrating, because at the end of the day, the child is the one that gets left behind. It's the child. That's what I really feel for. It's the child that gets left. It's the child that really feels like, this hasn't happened for me. And they get or the parent ends up getting taken to court, or it's just insane. It's just this stupid attendance. I mean, don't even get me started with that one. It's for me, it's just the reason it's attending is because you're not giving them the right support that they need, and the reason they're not getting the right support they need is because there's lack of funding and lack of training.
Yeah, it just goes back,
Also,
doesn't it?
lack of actual physical manpower to facilitate it.
Yeah.
Because look, you've got what? If you're in a primary school, you've got one teacher to 30 kids. If you're in a secondary school, you've got more than that. So how are you going to do that?
Yeah, no, that's it. It needs to change. I think the only hope they've got is people like us at the moment, and other parents that are really saying what is going on. And I think that's really important, that any change that happens is going to take years and years and years, I can see, because it's not going to be a quick fix. And the only thing we've got to do is be able to say what you're saying, is stand together and say and lean on each other. Again, everyone's a parent first when it comes to this, and just lean on each other's professionals and, professionalisms to be able to help each other to get to different places. They're good at separating us and segregating us, but I think now with social media, that's kind of brought to light that it's not just that one parent in the playground. We're not just the one in the classroom anymore. Like there is like hundreds and thousands and millions of us that are in the same bracket. And I think the more that we can do stuff like this podcast, that's been amazing, and future work and stuff like the collaborations, and show that we are standing together, I think that is going to be the change that's going to activate the later change of the systems. But we get fortunate, it's just shame we have to do it, but it is what it is, isn't it? I suppose people have had to throughout time. You've had women suffragettes and stuff like that. You've had the race. They've had big movements like this before, and it does come from the people taking the power and saying this, and enough of us saying it, and then change happening.
There's a very interesting, I think the film was Ants. Now the grass, see, they do tell you this, but they tell you in films, in children's films. So the grasshopper says to the other grasshopper, don't let them, like the ants, know X, Y, and Z, because then there are more of those ants, and if they work together, they will take us over.
Yeah, exactly it.
So there we are more, they are fewer. But unfortunately, until people realise this, and rather than, and that's another thing, it's divisive in terms of causing deliberate division. So people are arguing with each other rather than actually working together. That's deliberate as well.
Yeah, of course. And as I said, that's why it's not, you would think that everyone would just be able to, but then when they put that stuff like, they just put every hurdle under it, isn't it? The segregation. And then it's like, there's so many reasons of why it's not as clear cut.
No, it's not clear cut at all. And it's like, there's so many things that need to be put in.
But by that time, they've got you. And what they've done is like, so even I've seen it even in schools, if they get, so I've seen it happen even in the SEN world. So like ADHD versus autism. Someone that's in the middle to someone that's severely challenging behaviour. Someone like, they create the divide in-house. And that's why people are so hard to use it to help each other, isn't it? Because they just feel that they can put us in these subcategories and make you, if you don't unite and don't say the same thing, you're like, you're not the same as me, but we've got the same problem. That's what they don't want. That is what they don't want.
And then you get, hang on, let's all work together. And then, oh dear, then you've got a force to be reckoned with. This is it. If we actually all came together and actually said, right, we're going to use our expertise, this is what we're going to do to help you, support you, etc., then we all start working together, then you shouldn't have a problem.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. We've done it already, and you're going to have to just follow us now. Like, I just be honest, I don't see it going any other way than that, to be honest. The amount of pressure we're putting on it and the way, and it's, as much as it's a sad time, I'd hope to see that I'm alive for the happy ending. So when it gets to the big point and it'll change.
And as you say, we've got a long road ahead of us, huge long road, and I don't think, and it's not something that's going to happen overnight, but we really need to work cohesively together, and to get the funding to the right, people to then help those kids that are really struggling in that education system, and also the teachers as well, because they're working tirelessly as well, and to get them the right support as well.
Yeah, that's it. It has to be support all around, doesn't it? Because there's no point supporting all the parents and then putting the teachers up with.
To say, well, go on, trot on, let's go. You can't do that. You have to give everybody the right support.
No, it's true. It's true. I think, what? I think that's been a brilliant episode.
I really enjoyed that. It's fantastic.
I think that was actually great. Do you know what as well? I think we could definitely do another one, because there's so much. Again, I think just checking in, even on dyslexia, and sort of, it's just, again, everything that we're saying is reciprocated from everywhere. I suppose you get it too. I'm working with frozen families, you're working with families. It's not like we're saying anything different than any of these families are saying. Yep. it's the same across the board. It's just,
Absolutely.
kids are different. The kids all got different personalities, but the systems the school are putting in place and the resistance and the things they're doing, it's the same. It's the same. And
It's
it's
the
just,
same, and it's down to control. It's down to
yeah,
let's create some robots that we can control. And that's, and now I understand, looking back, why I hated school. I liked primary, I hated secondary school. I used to bunk the day off, like, because I'd go to protests.
yeah,
That's because I thought that was more important.
yeah, yeah.
But I'd catch up on my work, but I do it in
Mm.
my own time. So I thought, I have the control over this, not you telling me X, Y, and Z.
Yeah, no, that's it. And that's it. That's what school is, isn't it? Just there's years of them telling you how to do stuff and what to do and what you need to do and what you need to prepare for, and stopping you thinking, what do I want to do? What can I do? Like it's not good. So I reckon secondary school as well. It's crazy because the jump between primary school, as I said, primary school seems to get it right a bit more. You go to secondary school, and God, Jesus Lord, it just becomes like 20 years behind again.
Oh yeah, no. Secondary school is like. I think even back. I went to school in the night. I started secondary school 1990 back in the day. But I think of like how it's just not. It's got worse. It's even got worse. Do you know what I mean? Rather than, it's just like this same archaic system with teaching the kids. Doesn't work.
No, it doesn't work. Doesn't work.
Doesn't
It'd be
work.
interesting to see when they decide that it doesn't work.
But the thing is, as you say, it's about control. We've hit the nail on the head because they don't want people to think for themselves. They
No.
want people to not think for themselves, so then they can control.
And unfortunately for them, as I say, I think I don't know if I'm right about this, but people with ADHD do tend to make like rabbits. It's a side effect to their upbringing going up. So you've lost because they're all going to be everywhere. Because as I said, the numbers are on our favour, this one. So as much as you want to put up with resistance, you're going to get it in your family, and I hope you do.
I'm just hoping Bridget has a child with like severe autism or something like that, and she's like,
Yeah,
my God.
because it's very quickly, and I can see the naivety, and I will forgive the naivety because I understand. As long as, because you will, as soon as you become an SDN parent, oh God, okay, I understand. I eat my words because you've got no choice because you're going to have to struggle.
You have to understand. I mean, for me, like I just thought we were all a bit quirky, a bit flaky, like we could like lose stuff, we do this and that, I just thought, well, that's just how we are. But now we know, oh no, it's just my brain, how it works. I need to do like the stuff that the focus mate. Oh my God, that is amazing. I take that every day now because yeah,
I love it.
I love it. It's blimmin' great.
Hey, I'm supposed to video that. Did you know you can give that to kids from 10?
No, I did not.
I know, it's a game changer. I'm about to start Calvin on it next week. He's going to get into school and then see the difference.
Amazing. No, I did not know that because a lot of parents ask, and I said, well, I don't want to say, like, recommend something that's not suitable for a child because obviously you need to speak to your doctor, etc., etc. Please do that. That's essential. But that's good to know.
Yeah, I've got a call with them next week just to double check because I was like, they're just, to me, they're underselling this product so much. I'm like, you have a whole market of people. It's
you that brought this to light. Otherwise, I'd have never known. And my daughter has it. I mean, she does take medication as well because she does really.
But it works on top of it. It still works on top. It still works on top of the ADHD medication. It's crazy.
Oh my God. I mean, for me, ADHD medication, I felt horrendous taking it. I really didn't. It did not resonate with me. I can't take it. But this stuff is brilliant.
And it's natural. So you don't even feel bad, do you? You feel like everything there, you're like meant to be in anyway.
Medication, I had a banging headache. I felt sick. I just felt awful. Like I felt like the chemicals, because I don't like taking anything artificial. So I could feel the chemicals going through my body. It was awful. But yeah.
It's good. I'm going to start preaching that. Yeah, I've got a call next week. I'm going to start because I want to know that because that should be something that they missed the market on because a lot of 10-year-olds in secondary school, are you talking this is secondary school age? You're not pushing that towards children. What? It works for adults. If I can imagine what I'll do to a kid that's about to go through GCSEs, that has been on a waiting list, that hasn't got the diagnosis yet.
I mean, that's why I did a private diagnosis for my daughter because she was like last year of A-level and I just thought, I'm just going to have to do it. I'm going to have to just cut the bullet, like, and do it. It's not like because my mum made me do it because I just said, this is absolutely essential. This is so important that she has to, we haven't got time to wait 300 years for her to have it. And I didn't know about this stuff. So I thought she has to get the medication for her A-levels. But like, for some people, that's not even possible.
Yeah, I know. That's what I mean. So what a perfect thing, isn't it? Oh no, it's been a brilliant podcast. It's been great.
I've really enjoyed. Consider I've only slept 3 hours last night, and that was broken because of my lovely dog. I think I've done all right.
But you've smashed it. You've done really well. I'm really excited. As I said, I can sort of like, actually, I'll wrap it up and I'll go back in. But yeah, it was really good talking to you today.
Brilliant to talk to you. Yeah, and
you.
then like just get in touch and we'll like, because I think what we need to do is maybe just a workshop. What is dyslexia? What are you looking for? Like things that I think that would be super helpful for your parents, for your teachers, everybody. It's not just, you know.
I think it'll be gold. I think I can't think of a word of how important that will be. Like, absolutely. Even as I say, looking at it at home, again, there's a lot of people, and I get it's a lot about dancing around it. They say, oh, yeah, you've probably got it. And they just think it's just something that they can just not diagnose and like just think, oh, yeah, that's just another problem.
No, it's not. No, it's really not. Now, I better go because I've got 4 minutes until my lesson, so I better disappear.
No, that's all right. No worries. It's brilliant speaking to you.
I've really enjoyed today.
No, it's really good. Really good. Yeah, no, I'll drop you back in soon anyway.
Perfect. Lovely. Take care.
Right, see you in a bit.
Bye. Bye.